For those of us climbing to the top of the food chain, there can be no mercy. There is but one rule: hunt or be hunted. Welcome back.
Back in 2013, House of Cards came on the scene as Netflix's first ever self-commissioned original series. Since then, the series created by Beau Willimon has not only grown as a mature, textured piece of television, but also offered a sturdy foundation for the towering house that Netflix built. Inspired by the 90s BBC series starring Ian Richardson and the 1989 book by Michael Dobbs, House of Cards' appeal is based on its darkly distinctive mood and world, its Shakespearean magnitude, its heightened mirrors of our own world and historical past, and the guilty pleasure of rooting for its deliciously wicked central couple, Frank and Claire Underwood, played by Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright. Let's walk through each of these elements, which make the series so enduringly binge-worthy. Beware, there will be a few spoilers coming.
And the butchery begins.
House of Cards draws on the spirit of Shakespearean history and tragedy to imbue its drama with hyper-real grandeur and intrigue. We feel we might be watching a heightened version of today's politics, presented as exaggerated history for a future audience. The show captures, perhaps better than any modern example, the spirit of what Shakespearean audiences must have felt going to see productions of Richard III. In the historical play, the villainous Richard, who Spacey played at the London Old Vic in 2011, speaks openly to the audience, using his asides not to confess, but to gloat about his wicked designs.
And now, I'll marry. What though I killed her husband and his father?
House of Cards, like its BBC predecessor, utilizes the same confessional fourth wall break.
Opposition did rather well this year.
I would just love to talk to you about how to modernize the food processing industry in Iowa.
Please, slit my wrist with his butter knife.
The theatrical device could easily fall flat on camera.
What are you looking at?
But it works thanks to Spacey's enjoyably devious performance, the over-the-top nature of this extra dirty world, and the disconnect between what Frank says to us and how he appears to everyone else.
I will not run for president.
Look, they're thinking it's too good to be true, and it is.
Getting this window into his mind fascinates us, and knowing his secrets gets us on his side until we subtly root for his success at all costs. We feel in the know, superior to the foolishly honest victims. All of this psychologically works on us the same way Shakespeare played his audiences. In Othello, too, Iago is motivated by resentment when Othello promotes another over him, just as Frank's plot against the president is set off by his feeling robbed of his promised cabinet position. Claire takes a cue from Iago's tactics of suggestion as well, when she plants the idea of an affair in the First Lady's head.
I just have a thing about women who sleep with their bosses.
But the Shakespeare play that most deeply shapes House of Cards thematically is Macbeth.
Clams and Cawdor and King hereafter.
I think that you should be Prime Minister.
The Underwoods channel the Macbeth's disconnect between inner and outer to hide their true selves. As Lady Macbeth says,
"Look like the innocent flower, but with the serpent under it."
When Frank speaks to Peter Russo's ghost in church,
Peter, is that you?
this recalls how Macbeth is haunted by the ghost of Banquo, the friend he murdered. Most strikingly, though, is Lady Macbeth, as a model for Claire. At times, like Lady Macbeth, Claire seems the superior mastermind, the even more ambitious one, really pulling the strings. Claire's convincing lack of need for romance, fidelity, or motherhood reminds us of Lady Macbeth's famous words.
"Unsex me."
I'm willing to let your child wither and die inside you if that's what's required.
Lady Macbeth references having given suck or breastfed a child, but we're told that the Macbeths are childless. Her implicit lost child is echoed in Claire's past abortions, and neither woman expresses regret for her childless destiny. Yet in both stories, the couple's lack of children starts to haunt them, at least politically. The Macbeths in their barren crown, and the Underwoods in their inability to present the shining, picture-perfect family of Frank's Republican opponent, Conway.
You guessed it. I still hate children.
The Macbeth's ascent to power leads to a mixed-up world in which fair is foul and foul is fair. Yet, in the vast majority of Shakespeare's plays, the divine order, or great chain of being, must inevitably be restored. It remains to be seen if the House of Cards universe believes in poetic justice. But if Macbeth is any indication, this story doesn't end well. the Macbeths break down from within, as Lady Macbeth obsessively tries to wash invisible blood from her hands, and Macbeth reflects that life
It is a tale told by an idiot.
Full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
The dangerous nihilism of the Macbeths can only drive human beings insane, for we cannot continue to engage with a world of nothing that means nothing. Like a mix of Shakespearean history and tragedy, House of Cards also draws loosely and colorfully from our own historical past and present. In Season 4, Underwood and Conway introduce a meta-commentary comparing themselves to Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy in the 1960 presidential election.
If you were a Democrat, you'd be unstoppable. You'd be the new JFK.
And if you were a Republican, who'd you be? Nixon?
Underwood's comparison to the notorious Nixon, whom Spacey also played in the 2016 film Elvis and Nixon, is a plausible parallel. Brought down by his own paranoid plots, crimes, and scandals, Nixon was experienced and ruthless. Kennedy was young, relatable, and charismatic, just as the social media-friendly Conway speaks directly to Americans and gives people hope. In the show, the candidates represent opposite parties to their historical parallels. Underwood is a Southern Democrat, long after the age when Democrats held the South, and Conway is a Republican from New York.
Oh, you're a New York Republican? That's an attractive fiction, isn't it?
And you're a Democrat from South Carolina. That's even bigger fiction.
Well, there you go.
This recalls an earlier presidential race between Harry S. Truman and Thomas Dewey in 1948. A pragmatic Democrat versus a young New York Republican with a lead in the polls. Famously, the belief that Dewey would win was so strong that the Chicago Tribune printed the false headline, "Dewey defeats Truman," only to be disproven by the final vote. Like Gerald Ford, Nixon's successor, Underwood becomes president without ever winning an election, having taken on the offices of both president and vice president after a series of cabinet changes and resignations.
One heartbeat away from the presidency, not a single vote cast in my name. Democracy is so overrated.
Meanwhile, Underwood's wheeling and dealing with Congress is inspired by JFK's successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, also a Southern Democrat and former Majority Whip. Frank Underwood proudly displays a famous picture of Lyndon B. Johnson staring down a frightened congressman. Both also introduce ambitious social programs, LBJ's Great Society and Underwood's America Works. The outcomes of the programs are opposite, building the welfare system versus demolishing it. But both Underwood's and LBJ's hopes to define their legacies are derailed when global conflicts overshadow their legislative agenda. And of course, there's today. Claire's and Frank's power couple status invites comparison to the Clintons, while the Nixonian undertones have been eerily close to news stories about Trump's claims of tapes and calls for impeachment.
You know, it's at times like these I wish I was Nixon. Had every nook and cranny bugged.
Yet again, like Shakespeare's histories, the show is willfully rearranging loose historical or present inspirations to create something larger than life.
All three of us took bullets. Well, I know why we're smiling. We survived.
House of Cards captures a tone of outright, over-the-top wickedness, letting us live our juicy imaginings of how bad Washington might be, while scaring us with the thought, at times, that it's not purely exaggerated. One of the biggest differences between Netflix's series and its BBC ancestor lies in the look, feel, and mood. Urquhart's Parliament is brightly lit, visually reflecting a stuffy, staid political landscape, and its civilized surface hiding all intrigue. But from its first episode, directed by David Fincher, the updated House of Cards is dark. From the pounding music to the literal darkness of an overwhelming number of frames, we're told the Underwood's world is an underworld. This is a window into the shadows.
Miss Barnes?
How very deep-throat of you.
Adding to the dark is a calculated distance between the characters and the camera. Rarely do we get a true close-up. The space around the characters retains their outer personas, which they rarely let drop. No one is allowed inside. Camera movements are flawless tracking shots, always smooth. Composition is precise. Never do we see a human shake or messiness to the camera or framing. The production design heightens this feel of sterility. Frank and Claire, almost unbelievably free of clutter, seem to possess almost no personal items. Their perfectly empty homes visually underline that they lack a personal life, that they are their work and outer personas. Meanwhile, the pristine surface belies the dirty plotting underneath. The darkness also leads to a muted color palette and understated desaturation. Both contribute to our feeling that the environment is clean and attractive, yet not vibrant, human, or alive. We emotionally perceive the light is cold, and it often is, but viewers have noted that many frames involve an interplay of cold and warm, or blue and yellow, often with blue in the foreground and yellow in the background. The blue and yellow create a spiritual contrast, not between black and white, which in noir might represent good and evil, but between warm and cold, making us think of the pull between human warmth and icy ambition. The frame is neatly streamlined, not crowded by diverging colors. Both lights also stem from realistic light sources, daylight or interior lights, so there is a functional foundation, which is then moderately stylized thanks to the darkness and precision of lighting setups that strategically avoid multiple shadows. All of these visual cues, together with music, add up to a consistent mood and world. The atmosphere seems at once surreally removed from our factual DC and a close-to-home mirror of the disillusionment we feel about our actual political landscape. What keeps us engaged most of all is the central relationship between Frank and Claire. Their ups and downs, evolution and growth, together and away from one another. Like the Macbeths, the Underwoods are truly close. Setting aside their duplicity, they almost seem like a relationship other couples should study to learn how to communicate, work together, and read each other's minds.
Are you unsatisfied?
They're soulmates.
I love that woman. I love her more than sharks love blood.
Yet their connection isn't traditionally romantic or primarily sexual. They rarely have sex, and they each accept and expect the other's sexual affairs. Yet both place much higher importance on achieving their shared plans.
Oh, your wife. What does that even mean to you? Do not mistake any history you have shared for the slightest understanding of what our marriage is, or how insignificant you are in comparison.
In later seasons, though, we start to doubt the love and respect between the couple, as their marriage falters and looks, in bleaker moments, like a purely political arrangement.
I'm starting to question all of it, Francis. What any of it is worth. What are we doing this for?
In the White House, the couple now sleeps in separate rooms, the hall between them signaling their growing, gaping distance. The virtue Frank demands from others is loyalty.
Don't surprise me.
But to Frank, it's about others being loyal to him. Apart from those he deceives, he treats everyone as a servant, even a dog, who must obey before all else.
After a dog's bitten you, you either put it to sleep or you put a muzzle on it.
This derives from Frank Urquhart's worldview.
Well, everybody can be valuable. That's my philosophy.
Viewing all other people as pawns and servants leads to a tyrannical, dictator-like state, and ironically pushes people to consider turning on him, most notably Claire. Whereas Claire believes, and we initially perceive, that the couple are equal partners, it becomes clear that he views her as another loyal subject, merely the most privileged and important one.
And you will be the First Lady!
Though it's not clear whether this is a result of the isolating role of the presidency, or has been his feeling all along. Claire's leaving at the end of Season 3, and her attempt to take political power in her own name in Season 4 finally proved to Frank that he needs her as much or more than she needs him.
I said you were nothing in the all without me. It's the other way around.
Season 4 ends with a very significant moment when for the first time they break the fourth wall together.
That's right. We don't submit to terror. We make the terror.
This cements the fact that they are now partners in crime. Claire has finally convinced Frank that she is his equal, not his servant. The state of their union is strong. Yet the title, House of Cards, underlies the delicate fragility of any union or political empire. Just as Frank's career is always one dirty secret away from ruin.
How did this happen?
If we can predict anything for certain about the future episodes of House of Cards, it's that inevitably, something wicked this way comes.
One nation,